move on to proposed citizen recommendations. The first one is that the county charter should have a section requiring more transparency to the budget process for the public to readily access on the website. And what they're asking for is a comparison of periodic current year latest budget estimates to the original budget, explaining any department budget showing a variance plus or minus of 10%. In development of the ensuing year's budget, an explanation of any proposed department budget where the new budget is plus or minus 10%. Disclosure explanation of money transfers exceeding $5,000 between county government departments. An explanation of all year-to-date cumulative transfers exceeding $50,000 out of ad valorem reserves. Does anyone want to take this motion, this up?
This is not a charter change.
Correct. I'm just.
This isn't under Roberts, so these aren't motions. These are just things that.
Correct. This is stuff that came up from the citizens, and all I'm doing is putting it before you. And if I don't see 7, 8 hands coming up.
Oh, I see. Whether we should discuss it even.
Correct.
That's what. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Is there anyone who will discuss this? Moving on.
Well, the next.
This county administrative position shall be elected office for 4
That was
years.
taken care of in the.
That will take care of the other.
In the other, right.
That's
So
right.
that's.
Very good, Ms. Hess. This one is talking about budget elected position does not receive 50% of the primary vote cast. The two candidates receiving the highest number of votes in such primary election will move to a runoff status in the general election, with the candidate receiving the most votes between the two vying against the other candidate on the ballot to determine the winner of the election. Is there any hands going up to one?
Kevin, have we ever had a runoff?
Well, that used to be state law, 20 years ago, where you had to get 50%, and then they did away with the middle election. This is an interesting thought because you can get elected with 30% or 20% of the vote if you got enough candidates. So, I mean, I think this one
We're looking at it.
deserves some at least conversation because I don't particularly like the present system. You got a lot of people running for sheriff, as you said. You get a sheriff elected with 35% of the votes because you don't have the runoff. But it's expensive. You got to have another election between August and November, and the legislature a few years ago did away with it. That's the way. But that's how Lord Charles got elected. I mean, he lost in the. But then people coalesced behind him and then won in the general election. So,
Are you in favor of this?
Well,
I think it's interesting.
It's interesting, but I mean, are you urging us to adopt it? You have an opinion?
I would like to see it, yes. But it is expensive. There is another election that has to be held.
I can give you an example. Back in 2000, I ran first in the first election. There were 5 guys running in the race. The second race, 3 of the losers endorsed the second place winner, and I lost. So it can change elections. I had almost 47%, but I didn't have the 50 that was required back in those days. And it can change, and it's a tough time.
So are you supporting it, or?
No, I think
You had the most votes at
To get the most
47%.
votes, you get it, right?
that's what my feeling was.
Is there something magic about 50%? Maybe it should be 40%. I don't know, just asking the question.
Yeah, I have just a question on the language, because I read this, and correct me, if there's a primary, let's say Republican primary, if one candidate didn't get 50%, the top 2 vote getters would then go into the general election
right.
against another candidate, if, let's say, there was a Democrat running. So there'd be 3 people?
Well, it would have to be an interim.
No, it doesn't say that.
Well, I mean, this is the idea, that if the
Move
concept.
to a runoff status in the general election.
Well,
Yeah, no, it couldn't work that way.
It couldn't work that
That's what it
way.
says. That's why
it would be,
read
there'd be a
that.
second primary, there's a second primary in early August.
It'll be a runoff elect,
Right.
right? And then whoever won that would meet in the general election.
Correct.
I mean, I think the best way to handle these is for the chairman to read them and the committee to listen, and then at the end, show of hands, do you want to discuss it? Because we're going to discuss a lot of these that may not have anywhere near the number of hands ultimately that want to pursue it, I would suggest.
I see a show of hands who wants to take this issue up. Moving on.
For
The next
Four.
one's taken care of by that
It
VCC.
has, correct.
Leave the government as it is.
It has,
So
correct.
the next one and the next one. Now we're on to no church domination, no registered church denomination.
Is there anybody want to take that up? About the churches?
Well, we've already said
We've already
we
said-
can't do that.
Right.
You can discuss it if you want with regard to nonprofits, but it really comes into they already don't pay the general taxes. It's really only an MSBU question, and I think we've discussed.
We can probably put it in the recommendations to advise the advisory boards of the MSBU's that they can make the decision within their own district.
Bob, can I ask you a question on that relative to 501c3s? My wife and I have a registered 501c3, and I also own commercial property. Hypothetically speaking, if I was to deed my property to my 501c3, would my property then be?
I think it has to be used for the purpose. I don't think you can
It
just.
is. It actually is.
I think it's used.
Yeah, the property is.
It has to be put to the purview.
Right.
And in my mind, I look at that and see that that's a possible way for people to avoid, they're
Ad
shifting
valorem,
property to.
yeah, a lot of people do it.
Shifting things around,
Avoid
that's the
ad
danger I see
valorem,
with that. I don't have the intention of doing that, I don't need to do that, but other people may feel that that's a good way to avoid an unnecessary expenditure if they count it that way.
I think we could put in our report recommendation to the BCC that in the establishment of MSBU's and MSTU's, the board consider which properties to exclude from assessment for that particular use, whether it be non-governmental properties. It doesn't just come to 501c3s. I mean, as you can see, there was condominium association property down in some cases.
Yeah, the next item is the charter review be held every 2 years instead of 6 years.
I like to take it to 10.
Is there anyone who would like to take this issue up? Audio and video recording of the Charter Review Commission, including holding meetings in main chambers.
Just for the record, it needs to be clear that we are recording these meetings. They are currently recorded.
I think with in 6 years, who knows what progress will have been made in information technology. You might have a television thing in here. We'll just put it in the advice column, to the board. In our final report, that is possible, you televise the meetings.
All right.
Just for everybody.
Mr. Chairman, just another comment. I don't know what was meant by main chambers, but we would not work effectively in the main.
No,
the main
we'd have to have it down. We'd have to be down on the floor.
Yeah, just-
Yeah, that's out. Just the television might come to a point then when you can do it in here. If here even exists in 6 years.
Ensure every department head is in attendance at each Charter Review Commission meeting, so when certain topics, issues come up, they can personally address the citizens' questions.
Oh, that would cost too much money. We could summon them when we want them.
Any hands for that one? All right. Being members of the Charter Review Commission consisting of 15 members and 3 alternates shall be elected countywide by the voters of Charter County at the general election part of the year of review and be limited to 2 terms.
I don't think they should be elected, but I do think there's some merit in looking at a limitation of 2 terms.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think there is merit in looking at a limitation of being appointed to 2 terms.
A limitation on the number of terms, yeah.
Is There's some other discussion on that one?
I'm an alternate, but this is my first year, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't be comfortable not having some veterans in the room. We've done this a few times, at least. That would be a train wreck. I saw the newspaper article that Gary did this last week, and I was thinking, man, I don't think that person was very well informed, because some of you guys have been doing this for a while and can answer questions and things come up. Like keeping it on track and saying, that's not a charter issue, you can't handle that, let's keep moving forward.
I agree.
I think they should be limited to 3 terms.
That makes sense. That's 18 years.
18 years, right. But it's very important, at least the chair have served before. I mean, you really do, I mean, as one who has served before, you gather more and more information about the process and about the actual contents of our Constitution and its impact on the government. So I think that I would consider a limitation of terms, but I would make it 3 years. And I don't think election, I studied that charter from Sarasota that the attorney sent us. And the charter doesn't answer the questions. It would cost you money to get your name on the ballot. How many people are going to do that for this job? And it takes a lot of time, as we can all attest to. So I think the commissioners are in the best position to have knowledge of those who have a little bit of expertise in the area needed on this particular board. But term limits, I would be willing to discuss 3 years.
How about if we have a motion that the strictly would read, the Charter Review Commission should be limited to 3 consecutive terms, rather than, and leave the rest of that out.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second for that.
They have to be consecutive?
Mr. Chairman,
No, they don't have to be consecutive.
I like the idea that this might take in the consideration of finding a way to have more people that aren't, we've been accused of being cronyism people. And I think we ought to find a way to encourage the commissioners to find a way to broaden their search for members of this committee.
Well,
I agree with the term limits, at least 3 years, 3 terms.
Yeah.
Not
Shall we make
2.
it half and half, you think? Half?
Well,
At least half new members?
I hate to put a figure on it. Half is good, makes sense.
At least half new members.
But do we want to put that in the?
You have to be careful because you may not get applicants.
Yeah.
If you set a certain percentage, then some people are going to be guaranteed placement on the committee, just
because they're new.
Well, because
Well, from what I read in the paper, there were like 70 applicants. Was that correct? Did I read that correctly?
Those are 40-some.
40-some. 40-some applicants. And
I don't have the number in front of me, but I don't think that was.
You don't think that was the
I don't.
case? And Commissioner Doherty said at least half of this are new members.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I just to share with the group, I know I'm not a member, but I did have a conversation with Commissioner Doherty, and he raised a point that I hadn't thought about in this discussion. People that have been appointed multiple times have been appointed by multiple different commissioners with different backgrounds and different philosophies that have come and served in those seats while the other people have come. So, I mean, that's something to think about, that those commissioners, it's not that those of you that have served multiple times have been appointed by the same commission over and over again. It's been widely different commissions, each of the 6 years.
That's absolutely true. In my case, my first was 1998. I'm aging myself. But I was a mere kid at the time.
Just turned 18.
One thing to consider is, and when we think of three terms, these would be as voting members. So we could always increase the number of alternates from 3 to 5. And so folks who are alternates, they're learning, but that term as an alternate wouldn't count against them for their 3 consecutive terms. That way you increase knowledge pool, so to speak, of what's going on with the charter.